The R5 340X is an OEM graphics card launched by AMD in 2015 on the 28nm TSMC process and the GCN 1.0 architecture. It definitely looks really tiny next to my Nitro Plus 5700 XT, which launched in 2019 on the 7nm TSMC process and the RDNA 1.0 architecture. These are two very different graphics cards, but I was curious if the R5 340X can actually play any games, so today we're going to throw it in my PC, try out 7 Days to Die, GTA 5, and 3D Mark, and see what kind of results this little GPU gives us. Now, the R5 340X is certainly no powerhouse with only 2GB of GDDR3 clocked at 1000 MHz on a 64-bit bus for an effective 2 GB per second memory bandwidth, with 384 shaders and a core clock of 900 MHz. Compared to my 5700 XT, which has 2560 shaders, 8GB of GDDR6 memory on a 256-bit bus with the memory clocked at 1750 MHz for an effective 14 GB per second bandwidth, with a game clock of 1755 MHz and a boost clock of 1905 MHz. Jumping into GTA 5 first here on the 5700 XT, I actually had to go into the advanced graphics and set the frame scaling mode to 1.25x to put more of a load on the GPU, because at 1080p I was actually hitting the frame cap for GTA 5 and was getting some really low minimum frame rates. Now, as far as the graphics settings for the 5700 XT, I ran a mixture of very high and high quality settings, normal post FX, anisotropic filtering on X16, ambient occlusion on high, and tessellation on very high, and no other advanced graphics settings other than the 1.25x frame scaling mode. I made sure to drive the same exact path during this benchmark at around the same time of day, starting at Franklin's house and driving out to Sandy Shores, doing my best to maintain the same speed in each run. Now, unfortunately, I could not get GTA 5 to run in 1080p on the R5 340X, let alone at the 1.25x frame scaling mode, and it actually defaulted most of the quality settings to normal, and cranking the settings any higher just resulted in an unplayable experience, and I actually had to run GTA 5 at the lowest resolution, 800 by 600, to get something even remotely playable. And looking at the FPS numbers here, the R5 340X averaged 38.9 FPS with a 48 maximum and 29 for the minimum, and the 5700 XT averaged 125 FPS with a 167 maximum and 103 for the minimum. Now, keep in mind here, I was essentially running GTA 5 at very high and high settings at close to 1440p on the 5700 XT and only 800 by 600 on the R5 340X to get something playable. So under these testing conditions, the 5700 XT is more than 3 times faster than the R5 340X. Switching over to 7 Days to Die here, this is the footage I recorded with the R5 340X, and as you can see, it's an absolute unplayable experience. I was able to maintain the same settings between the two GPUs here, and looking at the FPS results, the 5700 XT averaged 163 FPS with 206 for the maximum and 134 for the minimum, and the R5 340X managed a whopping 7 FPS average, 9 for the maximum, and 5 for the minimum, which makes the 5700 XT in 7 Days to Die more than 23 times faster. And finally, taking a look at 3D Mark, I ran the Firestrike benchmark. I wanted to run a synthetic benchmark to see what kind of scores these GPUs would produce, and the 5700 XT had a graphics score of 26,654, and the overall score here was 11,670. And the R5 340X produced a graphics score of 814 and a combined score of 235, which makes the 5700 XT in 3D Mark Firestrike more than 32 times faster. So there you have it. I wanted to test the R5 340X out of curiosity to see what it was capable of, and it turns out not very much. It's really meant to just power your monitor. But if you enjoyed, hit subscribe. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next video.